Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Nature channel. Find yourself a comfortable position, let your shoulders drop just a little, and take one slow, easy breath. There's nowhere you need to be right now, nothing you need to do. Tonight, we're going to drift together towards some of the most quietly extraordinary places on Earth. Mountains that wear color the way a meadow wears morning light. Soft bands of rose and gold, pale lavender and deep rust red, layered into hillsides so gently that they look like something a kind hand painted while the rest of the world was sleeping. These are the Rainbow Mountains, and they exist in several beautiful corners of our planet. Each one a little different, each one utterly peaceful. So breathe out slowly, let the day settle, and come along. There is a place in the Zhangye Danxia region of northwestern China where the mountains look like they were wrapped in silk. The colors there, burnt orange, cherry red, dusty yellow, soft green, are not painted on. They grew there over millions of years, layer by layer, the way a tree grows ring by ring, quietly and without rushing. The mountains didn't decide to be colorful. They simply became what time and mineral and water and air made them. There's something deeply restful in that thought. The word Danxia in Chinese refers to rosy clouds. And when you look at photographs of these mountains in the early morning, when the light is low and amber and everything is still, you understand exactly why someone once looked up and thought of clouds. The shapes are soft. The edges are rounded. Nothing about them is sharp or alarming. These particular mountains in Zhangye sit in the Gansu province of China, a region that was once part of the ancient Silk Road. For centuries, travelers passed near these hills on camel and on foot, carrying spices and silk and stories from one side of the world to the other. The mountains watched all of it in silence, the way mountains do. The colors in the Zhangye Danxia landscape come from sedimentary rock. Sediment is simply material, sand, clay, minerals that settled over time, layer upon layer, like blankets folded one on top of another. Over about 24 million years, these layers built up, each one carrying a slightly different mineral signature, a slightly different shade. Red in these mountains often comes from iron oxide, the same thing that makes rust. When iron in the rock meets oxygen over long stretches of time, it warms into that deep, familiar reddish tone. It's the color of old bricks, of terracotta pots left in the sun, of the inside of a ripe plum. The yellows and golds come from other minerals, limonite and goethite among them, though the names matter far less than the color itself. Picture a soft, dusty yellow, like dried grass in late summer, like honey held up to a window. That's the feeling of it. Green in these mountains is rarer and quieter. It shows up in thin bands, almost like a whisper between the louder oranges. Chlorite and other minerals with gentle names carry that color through the stone. When you see a stripe of green winding through a red hillside, it feels like a secret the mountain is telling you. The Zhangye Danxia National Geological Park was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010, which means the world agreed officially that this place deserved to be protected and remembered. Sometimes it's good when the world agrees on something beautiful. The mountains are at their most vivid after rain. The water darkens the surface of the rock, deepening every color, the way wetting a pebble from a riverbed suddenly reveals its true warm tone. If you've ever picked up a gray stone from a stream and been surprised by the colors inside it when it was wet, you understand this perfectly. Sunrise and sunset are the quietest times in Zhangye. The low-angled light catches the ridges and folds of the mountains and casts long, soft shadows across them, turning the whole landscape into something dimensional and dreamy. Travelers who wake early for this are never disappointed. The hills are not enormous by mountain standards. They roll and wave more than they tower. You don't feel small in front of them. You feel held by them, the way you feel held by a gentle landscape rather than challenged by a dramatic one. Winds move across these hills with patience. There are no dramatic cliffs here to create rushing gusts. The air drifts softly, carrying fine dust that sometimes blurs the far ridges into pale watercolor shapes, making the distance look soft and uncertain, like the edge of a dream. Animals live quietly in and around these landscapes. Lizards warm themselves on rock surfaces in the morning, their small bodies absorbing the same warmth that colors the stone around them. Birds circle slowly overhead in the thermals that rise from the heated hillsides. Everything moves at a gentle pace. The vegetation in the Zhangye area is spare and low. Grasses, small shrubs, plants that have learned to be patient with dry air and mineral-rich soil. They grow in the cracks of rock and along the lower slopes, adding little touches of living green to the painted hillsides. It rains in Zhangye, but not excessively. The region has a semi-arid climate, which means the sky is often clear and blue, a wide and quiet blue that lets the mountain colors stand out without competition. That blue is important. It's the frame the picture needs. When clouds do gather, they throw slow-moving shadows across the hills. Watching those shadows travel, moving at cloud speed, which is a very comfortable speed, is one of the most peaceful things you can do with your eyes. Local people have lived near these mountains for generations. For them, the colors are simply the colors of home. Familiarity doesn't always dull wonder, though. Many people who grew up in the shadow of these hills still pause sometimes to look at a ridge in late afternoon light and feel something quiet and grateful move through them. If you feel your eyes getting a little heavy right now, that's perfectly fine. Let them rest. There's no image you need to see. The colors are here in the words, soft and warm, waiting whenever you want them. And if you're enjoying this gentle journey so far, feel free to leave a little comment below, even just a word or two. It means a great deal, and it helps this channel find its way to other people who might need a quiet place to rest tonight. The stone in these mountains is, in geological terms, relatively soft. Not soft the way fabric is soft, but softer than granite, more willing to be shaped by wind and water over time. This is part of why the forms are so rounded and flowing. The landscape has been gently sculpted, not sharply cut. And so, the mountains of Zhangye rest in their valley, draped in mineral color, watched by a wide sky, shaped by millions of patient years. They ask nothing of you, they simply are. And perhaps right now, simply being is exactly what you need too. The Rainbow Mountains of China are extraordinary, but they are not alone in the world. As you rest here and let your breathing slow, know that there are other colored mountains quietly existing on other continents, each one shaped by its own long and peaceful story. Tonight, we'll visit them one by one, like moving slowly through rooms of a very calm and beautiful house. In Peru, in the Andes, there is a mountain called Vinicunca. Its name in the local Quechua language means Mountain of Seven Colors, though if you count carefully, you might find more than 7: lavender and turquoise, and deep rust, and soft white, and pale green, and warm ochre, all layered in bands that follow the shape of the mountain itself, curving and flowing like the lines in a piece of fine wood. Vinicunca sits at about 5,000 meters above sea level. The air there is thin and cold and very, very clear. On a still day, the sky above it is a particular shade of deep blue that only exists at altitude, where the atmosphere is thin and the light is less filtered. It is the blue of absolute quiet. The mountain was largely unknown to the outside world until the mid-2000s, when receding snow and ice, which had covered it for decades, revealed the colors beneath. The mountain had been there all along, patient and vivid, simply waiting to be seen again. There's something touching about that. The colors of Vinicunca come from different minerals deposited during the tectonic activity that built the Andes. The lavender tones come from iron sulfide mixed with clay. The turquoise stripes carry copper and other bluish minerals. The red is iron and clay in different proportions. Each stripe is a chapter of the mountain's long history, written in color rather than words. The Andes are among the youngest major mountain ranges on Earth, geologically speaking. They began forming around 25 million years ago, when tectonic plates began pressing against each other with the slow, irresistible patience of geological time. The rainbow colors of Vinicunca are partly a result of that pressure, different rock types brought together and layered in the process. At altitude, the wind is a constant and gentle companion. It moves through the grass and across the bare, mineral faces of the mountain with a soft, continuous sound, like the distant turning of pages. There is almost always wind in the high Andes, but it is rarely violent at Vinicunca. It simply moves, the way breathing moves. The grasses growing on and around Vinicunca are called ichu, a high-altitude bunch grass that grows in pale gold tufts across the Andean plateau. These grasses have adapted to cold nights, thin air, and intense sunlight. They don't complain about any of it. They simply grow, low and steady and rustling softly in the wind. Alpacas graze across these high grasslands. They are wonderfully unbothered animals, soft-faced, curious in a mild way, moving slowly across the hillsides and occasionally pausing to regard the landscape with what appears to be quiet contentment. They've been part of this Andean world for thousands of years, long before any visitors arrived with cameras. The local people, Quechua communities who have lived in these mountains for centuries, consider the high peaks sacred. The Apus, or mountain spirits, are honored and respected. Mountains are not obstacles or scenery here. They are presences, elders of a kind, deserving of quiet acknowledgement. Mist gathers in the valleys below Vinicunca in the early mornings, filling the lower elevations with soft white, while the peaks remain clear and bright above. Seen from below, the colored mountain appears to float in that white mist, a ribbon of color resting on a cloud. It is one of the gentlest looking things you can imagine. Because of the altitude, sound travels differently near Vinicunca. There are no trees to absorb and complicate it. Sound moves clean and clear across the open grassland. The bell around an alpaca's neck, the soft call of a bird, the wind in the ichu. Each sound arrives to you complete and unhurried. The sunrises at Vinicunca are long. Because the horizon at altitude is often perfectly clean, the light spends a generous amount of time spreading upward before the sun itself appears. Everything goes from dark blue to indigo to soft violet to pale gold, and the colored mountain catches each stage of this and wears it for a few quiet minutes before the next shade arrives. Small lakes sit in the valleys and plateaus around the Rainbow Mountain. They are cold and perfectly still in the mornings, reflecting the sky and the mineral hills with such precision that you can lose track of which direction is up. Everything doubled, everything soft, everything peaceful. In the cold nights at altitude, the stars are extraordinary. The thin air and the distance from any city lights means that the sky fills completely, not just with the stars you can easily see, but with layers and clouds of them, the Milky Way stretching overhead like a soft, pale river. The mountain stands in silhouette below all of it, dark and quiet. The geology of Vinicunca is considered so significant that researchers from universities around the world have come to study its stratigraphy, the layering of its rocks. They come carefully and respectfully because the colors are fragile in some ways. Rain and foot traffic can slowly wear away the mineral surface. The mountain offers its beauty gently, and it's best appreciated gently in return. Please feel free to like this video if the colors and the quiet are settling nicely over you. It helps the channel so much, and it takes only a moment. And if you have a favorite mountain or peaceful place you love to think about before sleep, I'd love to read about it in the comments. The neighboring mountains around Vinicunca have their own personalities. Some are rust dark and massive. Some are pale and dusted with snow. Together, they form a landscape that feels complete in itself. A world that doesn't need anything added to it. A place that is exactly what it is. At sunset, The colors of the mineral mountain deepen. The reds become richer, the lavenders deepen toward purple, the yellows warm toward amber. The mountain looks, in those last minutes of light, almost impossibly beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes you exhale slowly rather than gasp. And then the light goes. The colors cool and darken, the stars appear, the alpacas settle somewhere in the grass. The wind moves across the plateau in long, soft sweeps. The mountain rests. And perhaps, right now, so can you. Let's rest here for a moment before we move on. Let your weight sink a little more into wherever you're lying or sitting. Take a slow breath. Feel the air move in and then gently out. There's no hurry. The mountains are patient, and so are we. Beyond China and Peru, there are other places in the world where the earth itself seems to have chosen to be beautiful in this layered, mineral way. We're going to drift towards some of them now, gently, the way a leaf drifts on a slow current. In the Danakil Depression of Ethiopia, one of the lowest and most geologically active places on Earth, there are landscapes so colorful they seem almost imagined. The Dalal region there features hydrothermal pools and mineral formations in yellows, greens, and oranges so bright and clear they look like stained glass. The colors come from sulfur and iron salts and potassium minerals, deposited by hot springs that have been bubbling up from deep in the earth for thousands of years. The Dalal area sits in the Afar Triangle, a place where three tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart from each other. This means the ground there is being gently stretched over millions of years, and hot material from deep in the earth rises slowly toward the surface. The colors are a side effect of all that slow, patient geological work happening far beneath the surface. The temperature in Dalal can be very high during the day, but in the early morning and evening, when the sun is low, the light catches those mineral deposits at an angle that turns the whole landscape into something otherworldly and, in its own way, deeply peaceful. It is a place of extremes, but in photographs taken in the golden hour, it simply looks quietly extraordinary. Salt is everywhere in the Danakil. The whole region was once covered by an ancient sea, and as that sea evaporated over millennia, it left behind thick layers of salt. Local Afar people have harvested this salt for generations, cutting it into flat blocks and loading it onto camels for the journey to market. The camels walk in long, patient lines across the white landscape, doing what they have always done. The colors of mineral-rich landscapes often remind people of things from ordinary life. Turmeric and paprika in the yellows and oranges, the pale green of spring peas in the cooler mineral tones, the white of fresh snow in the salt fields. Nature, it seems, has a habit of returning to a set of familiar and comfortable colors. In Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska, copper-rich mountains have left their mineral signature on the surrounding landscape in a different way, as vivid green and blue stains flowing down rocky faces in long stripes, created by rainwater, dissolving copper minerals and carrying them across the stone. These colors are quieter than those of Zhangye or Vinicunca, more subtle, more private. You have to look for them. They reward patience. Copper is one of the oldest metals known to humans. Its distinctive blue-green color, when it oxidizes, what we call patina, appears on ancient statues, on old rooftops, on coins that have sat undisturbed for centuries. When you see that color on a mountainside, you're seeing the same patient chemical process at work, just at a much larger and quieter scale. In the painted hills of Oregon in the United States, red and yellow and black clay stones rise in smooth, rounded forms from the high desert landscape. These hills were formed from volcanic ash that fell over this region millions of years ago and was slowly transformed by water and time into brilliantly colored clay. Rain gives the hills a polished surface that catches the light beautifully. They seem almost to glow. The John Day fossil beds, which include the painted hills, have yielded thousands of ancient plant and animal fossils. The same quiet layers of mineral-rich sediment that create the colors also preserve the past. Leaf prints, shells, the outlines of creatures that walked here millions of years before there was anyone to name them. It's a landscape that holds time very gently. Fossil leaves found in the Painted Hills region include species related to trees still living today, ancestors of magnolias, of dawn redwoods, of plants you might see in a garden. The colors in those hills are old in a way that is hard to fully imagine, but not frightening, just vast and still and quietly wonderful. The rounded shape of the painted hills is deliberate in a way, or rather, it is the result of a specific geology that doesn't produce sharp angles. The volcanic clay weathers smoothly. Every edge rounds off. Every form curves softly. Standing among them is like standing among enormous sleeping forms, warm-colored and utterly at rest. Rainfall sculpts small channels into the colored clay, thin lines that follow the slope of each hill in delicate patterns. These channels collect and then dry between rains, leaving behind faint mineral crusts in slightly different colors, the hill writing its own small story each time it rains, then reading it back slowly as the days dry out. In the dry season, the painted hills are very quiet. The grasses are dry and pale. The junipers stand in their small, dark clusters, and the wind moves through without hurrying. There are birds, hawks riding thermals, small sparrows working through the dry grass, but their sounds are spare and unhurried in keeping with the landscape. Dusk in the painted hills is a slow process. The reds deepen and the yellows go amber, and then soft gold. The shadows between the hills grow longer and cooler. The sky turns its deepening blues overhead. Everything takes its time. Everything settles. If you're still with me now, I'm so glad. You might want to check out the playlist on this channel. There are other gentle journeys waiting there, through forests and oceans and under starlit skies, all moving at the same soft pace as tonight. They'll be there whenever you need them. In the Calanques de Piana on the island of Corsica, granite formations glow warm pink and orange in the afternoon light. These aren't layered colors in the way of Zhangye, but rather the natural tone of the granite itself, feldspar-rich rock that carries a warm, rosy hue deepened by centuries of sunlight and sea air. The calanques are inlets where the pink cliffs meet the blue Mediterranean directly without any transition. The rock plunges into the sea, and the sea accepts it, calmly washing the base of each cliff with unhurried waves. The sound of that washing is one of the most peaceful sounds in the world. Water meeting stone, neither in a hurry, neither trying to win. Seabirds nest in the high ledges of these pink cliffs, osprey and gulls and smaller birds that know the rock faces intimately, every ledge and overhang. From their perspective, the pink stone is simply home. It holds their nests. It catches the morning light that warms their feathers. That's what a mountain is for. In the evenings on Corsica, the Maquis, the fragrant low scrubland of rosemary and lavender and cistus and myrtle, releases its scent into the cooling air. The pink mountains glow in the last light, and the air smells of wild herbs and sea salt. Everything is color and fragrance, and the slow, easy sound of the sea. Sleep, if it's coming for you, is a kind thing. Let it arrive. The colored mountains will still be here, patient and still and warm, whenever you want to return to them. And if you'd like to say good night in the comments before you drift off, I'd love to see that little note waiting in the morning. The night is soft around you. Whatever sounds exist where you are, the quiet of a room, perhaps, or the distant murmur of the world outside, let them become part of the background, like the wind across a high Andean plateau, present and gentle, and not asking anything of you. We've been moving through several of the world's colored landscapes, and there's still so much softness to explore. Let's go now to a different kind of rainbow mountain, the kind formed not by sediment and time, but by the slow alchemy of hydrothermal water moving through rock and depositing mineral beauty as it goes. In Yellowstone National Park in the United States, there are hot springs and fumaroles and geysers that have built up conic mineral formations in pale yellows and whites and delicate oranges over thousands of years. The Grand Prismatic Spring, the largest hot spring in the United States, is encircled by a rainbow of colors. Deep blue at the center, where the water is hottest, then rings of green and yellow and orange, and rust at the cooler edges, where microbial mats grow in the gradually warming shallows. Those colors at the edges of the Grand Prismatic Spring come from communities of microorganisms, tiny living things that thrive in water that would be too warm for most life. Each temperature band supports a different community, and each community carries its own pigment. The colors are alive in the most quiet and fundamental sense. The blue at the center of the spring comes from the water itself. Very hot, very pure water absorbs red light and reflects blue, the same principle that makes the deep ocean appear blue from above. It is a very deep, very steady blue, not the lively blue of a summer sky, but something closer to the blue of deep space, calm and absolute. Steam rises from the Grand Prismatic Spring continuously, thin and white and moving in quiet spirals in the still morning air. In winter, when the air is cold and the spring remains hot, the steam is denser and obscures the edges of the spring in a moving white curtain. You can hear the water, a soft, constant sound, like breathing. The mineral terraces of Mammoth Hot Springs in Yellowstone are built from travertine, calcium carbonate deposited by the hot water as it cools and flows across the surface. The formations look like a frozen waterfall, white and cream and pale orange, tier upon tier of mineral shelves, with warm water still trickling slowly over their edges. It is the slowest waterfall in the world, built by time rather than force. Travertine is also the stone used in many ancient Roman buildings. The Colosseum, for example, was partly built of it. The same patient mineral process that builds delicate terraces in Yellowstone also built one of the most enduring human structures in history. There is something linking about that thought. The same material, the same slow chemistry in both the natural and the human world. Bison graze on the grasslands near Mammoth Hot Springs, indifferent to the extraordinary geology at their feet. They move slowly, heads down, their breath misting in the cold air. They have been part of this landscape for thousands of years. They are, in their own large and peaceful way, part of the color of the place. In Pamukkale, Turkey, the name means cotton castle in Turkish. Calcium-rich hot springs have built up terraces of white travertine along a hillside above a valley. The terraces collect pools of warm, pale blue-green water. Seen from a distance, the white cliff face gleams against the surrounding green hills like something from a gentle dream. Pamukkale has been drawing visitors for thousands of years. The ancient city of Hierapolis was built on top of the white terraces, and people came from across the ancient world to bathe in the warm mineral waters. They sat in pools that looked out over the valley, warmed by the earth itself as the sun moved slowly overhead. The water that feeds Pamukkale flows from springs rich in calcium bicarbonate. As the water emerges and cools, carbon dioxide escapes and the calcium crystallizes as white calcium carbonate, travertine, slowly building those graceful shelves and pools. It happens at a pace you cannot watch, but can, over years, observe. Shallow pools of warm water are one of the most deeply comforting things in the natural world. The visual softness of them, pale bottom, slight movement, the light playing through, speaks to something very old in us, some memory of warmth and safety, and the world being kind. The pools of Pamukkale offer all of that. At sunset, Pamukkale turns gold. The white travertine, which reflects whatever light falls on it faithfully, goes first cream, and then pale amber, and then a warm honey gold as the sun descends. The pools hold that gold in their water for a few quiet minutes. Then the light fades, and everything turns gently blue and white in the dusk. Turkey has many landscapes that carry quiet color. The rose and cream fairy chimneys of Cappadocia, the deep blues of the Mediterranean coast, the soft greens of inland valleys. The country sits on some of the most geologically active land in the world, and that activity, over millions of years, has produced extraordinary beauty. If you have a comment waiting to be typed about where you're from, or what color you're imagining right now, or simply what the word peaceful looks like tonight, I'd love to read it. Comments are little lights on this channel, each one appreciated. The hot springs of Iceland carry color too. The silica-rich water of the geothermal pools carries a pale, milky blue that is unlike any other blue in the world. The Blue Lagoon and other geothermal areas turn the stark volcanic landscape into something surprising and soft. The pale mineral blue sitting inside the black and gray lava fields like a gentle contradiction. Iceland's colors are often stark contrasts. The white of snow, the black of lava, the blue of geothermal water, the pale green of moss on rock. But in that starkness is a particular kind of beauty, clean and uncomplicated and deeply restful. The way a room with very little in it can sometimes feel exactly right. The moss of Iceland, Rhacomitrium lanuginosum for those who like such things, grows slowly over the lava fields in thick, soft carpets of gray-green. It is one of the few plants that can colonize fresh lava, arriving first, creating just enough soil for others to follow eventually. It is patient, and its patience has covered much of Iceland in something that looks, from a distance, like a very soft blanket. Steam rises from geothermal vents across the Icelandic landscape, the way it rises from a warm cup on a cool morning. From a hilltop, you can sometimes count a dozen or more steam columns rising quietly across the plain, each one slow and white and unhurried, the earth breathing. And perhaps you are breathing a little more slowly now too. That's good. That's exactly right. Let the warmth of all these mineral springs and painted hillsides settle over you like something soft and warm and kind. There's no need to hold on to any particular thought right now. Thoughts can come and go like the slow-moving clouds over a colored Peruvian hillside, present for a moment, then drifting on, leaving the mountains still and clear behind them. You don't have to follow any of them. Just rest here in the quiet. Let's move now through the science of color in stone, but gently. Not as a lesson, never as a lesson, but as a series of small, soft revelations. The way morning light reveals things slowly rather than all at once. Iron is perhaps the most generous mineral in the world when it comes to color. In its various forms and states of oxidation, it gives us everything from the warm reds of Zhangye to the yellows of the painted hills to the dark purples of certain mountain ranges in the American Southwest. All from the same element, simply in different combinations and states. Iron wearing different moods, you might say. The deep purples and dark reds of the Vermilion Cliffs in Arizona and Utah come from iron-rich Navajo sandstone that formed from ancient sand dunes, enormous dunes, larger than any existing today, from a desert that spread across what is now the American West some 190 million years ago. The wind moved those ancient sands into forms, and the forms were slowly cemented by mineral-rich water into stone. The dunes became cliffs. The desert became a landscape of extraordinary color. The Vermilion Cliffs National Monument in Arizona contains formations called the Wave, a series of undulating sandstone troughs whose curved walls carry flowing bands of cream, red, orange, and yellow. The forms look as if someone gathered all the patience in the world and carved them with the softest possible tools. Water and wind were those tools. Time was the workshop. To stand in the wave and look up is to see a curved ceiling of layered color. The ancient dunes preserved at every angle, each layer a different wind direction, a different mineral moment. The scale is intimate rather than grand. It holds you rather than overwhelming you. The colors of the American Southwest change through the day, like a slow performance, bright and clear at noon, golden and warm in the afternoon, deep amber, and then violet in the evening hour before dark. Each phase lasts only a short while, and then it's gone. And then something else beautiful has arrived quietly in its place. Watching this, if you could sit still enough and long enough, would be a very complete experience of time. Ancient peoples lived among these colored landscapes and naturally incorporated them into ceremony and story and art. The Navajo Nation's lands include some of the most colorful geology in the world, and that color has always been part of the culture, reflected in textiles, in sand painting traditions, in the way the landscape is spoken of in language that treats the earth as a relative. Sand painting, practiced by Navajo and other indigenous peoples of the Southwest, uses colored sands, often including mineral pigments, to create intricate ceremonial images. The colors of the earth are brought together in careful patterns, and then, when the ceremony is complete, the painting is dispersed. The beauty is not meant to be kept, only made and witnessed, and then returned. There's a kind of wisdom in that. The arches of Arches National Park in Utah are carved from the same iron-rich sandstone, their warm red-orange color consistent and deep. A natural arch is one of the most elegant shapes that stone can form. A curve, a span, open in the middle, letting the sky through. Each one took millions of patient years to become itself. Delicate Arch, the most famous in the park, stands on the edge of a rock bowl above a canyon. In the late afternoon, it glows red-orange against a sky that has gone deep blue. A person standing beneath it looks small, not in an uncomfortable way, but in the way that makes you feel part of something much larger and much calmer than your ordinary day, held rather than lost. The lichens on rock surfaces add another layer of color to stone landscapes. Gray-green, bright orange, pale yellow, almost black. A lichen is not a single organism, but a partnership between a fungus and an alga or cyanobacterium living together for mutual benefit. The fungus provides shelter and mineral access. The alga or cyanobacterium provides food through photosynthesis. They have been doing this together for hundreds of millions of years. It is one of the oldest and most comfortable partnerships in the natural world. Orange lichen on red rock is a combination of colors that feels immediately right, the way certain color combinations in a warm room feel like they belong together. The lichen grows slowly, sometimes only a millimeter or two per year, covering the rock surface in a living mosaic that changes very gradually with each decade. In the high mountains of the world, above the tree line, the exposed rock faces are often more colorful than the rock below, simply because they receive more sun and wind and rain and have more opportunity to develop mineral coatings and biological crusts. The higher you go in many mountain ranges, the more quietly vivid the stone becomes. The mountains of Ladakh in northern India, where the high plateau meets the Himalayan ranges, carry extraordinary colors: ochre and purple and rust and cream, streaked and layered and folded by tectonic forces into landscapes of quiet complexity. Buddhist monasteries perch on many of the ridges and cliffs there, their white walls and colorful prayer flags in gentle contrast with the mineral tones below. Prayer flags in Ladakh and Tibetan regions of the Himalayas are strung between peaks and ridges in long diagonal lines of blue, white, red, green, and yellow. The wind moves them in continuous, gentle motion. They've been moving in the high mountain wind for centuries, their colors slowly fading as the wind and sun do their quiet work. New ones replace the old ones. The movement continues. The sound of prayer flags in the wind is one of the softer, more rhythmic sounds in the world. A quiet flapping and rustling that has no urgency in it, no message, just movement and fabric and air. It blends easily with the wind itself until you can't quite separate them. Remember, if you're enjoying this kind of quiet journey, the channel has a playlist full of other gentle nights, forests, oceans, night skies, rain. They're all waiting for you at whatever pace you need them. You can find the playlist right there on the channel page. In the Atacama Desert of Chile, the driest non-polar desert in the world, there are colored hills and rock formations that glow in the thin, clean light. The Valle de la Luna, or Valley of the Moon, has salt formations and clay hills in pale grays and whites and tans that look, in the extraordinary clarity of the Atacama air, almost lunar, almost otherworldly, but peaceful, absolutely peaceful. The Atacama receives almost no rain. Some weather stations there have never recorded any. The dryness means that rock surfaces are preserved with unusual clarity. There is no moss, very little lichen, very little to soften the colors, but the colors themselves are pale and gentle, and the light is so clean that everything looks freshly revealed. At night in the Atacama, the stars are among the most brilliant visible from anywhere on Earth. Several of the world's most powerful observatories are built there on the high plateau, pointing their careful instruments upward into that extraordinary dark sky. The astronomers work through the night in the cold, the colored hills around them lost in darkness, the universe wheeling overhead in complete, gorgeous silence. And perhaps the silence here in this room wherever you are, is beginning to feel a little like that. Wide, deep, safe. Let it hold you the way a colored mountain holds its minerals, patiently, permanently, without any effort at all. You're doing so well at resting. Whatever else the day contained, whatever busy thoughts or tasks or conversations, they're outside now, like weather that has passed. And here, in this moment, there is only the slow turning of these colored landscapes and the breath moving gently in and out of you, and the quiet. Let's continue our soft journey through stone and color and the long, slow work of the earth. The mountains of the Altai region, spread across parts of Russia, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and China, contain mineral landscapes of extraordinary variety. The Kulishman Plateau in Russian Altai has rocky formations in browns and reds and pale yellows, with cold, clear rivers running between colored hills and the sky, always in these high places, very wide and very blue above. The Altai is an ancient name from Turkic languages meaning something close to golden mountains. The reference is to actual gold deposits in the region, but the name applies equally well to the color of the autumn larch forests that turn the hillsides gold each September, and to the sunlit tone of the mineral hillsides in the long afternoon light. Gold as a color appears in many mountain landscapes, not the gold of metal, but the softer gold of mineral and light. Limonite deposits, weathered feldspar, dry grass, lichen on pale stone. All of them contribute to a gold that is warm and unmistakably friendly. The world chose gold in its geology and in its plants for what seems like a deliberate reason. In the mountains of Central Asia, the stone underfoot on high passes is often a mosaic of mineral colors, reds and grays and greens and yellows, all mixed together in the rubble and scree, looking like a collection of thoughts from many different geological eras gathered into one place by the patient work of glaciers. Glaciers are, in a sense, the slowest rivers. They move at a pace measured in meters per year rather than meters per second, carrying stone within them and on them and beneath them, grinding and polishing and sorting and depositing. A mountain landscape shaped by glaciers has a particular roundedness to it. The ice has taken the sharpest corners off, left hollows and smooth faces and long curved valleys behind. Glacier-fed lakes in colored mountain landscapes are often the most vivid turquoise or blue imaginable. The color comes from tiny particles of glacially ground rock flour, suspended in the cold water, which scatters light in the blue-green range. Moraine Lake in Canada's Banff National Park is perhaps the most famous of these, a turquoise that seems too good to be real, set among peaks of gray and white, the whole scene framed by emerald forest. The first human to see Moraine Lake on a still morning when the mountains are reflected perfectly in the turquoise water, and the only sound is birdsong from the spruce trees, must have stopped and been very quiet for a while. There was no good response but stillness. In Banff and the Canadian Rockies, iron-stained limestone cliffs give parts of the landscape a warm red-orange tone that contrasts beautifully with the surrounding grays and whites and the deep blue of glacial lakes. The mountains there are layered in pale grays with occasional bands of warmer color, like quiet sentences. The Rockies formed when thick layers of sediment laid down in ancient seabeds were compressed and thrust upward during tectonic activity. What were once sea floors became peaks above the cloud line. The fossils of marine creatures, ammonites, crinoids, ancient corals, can sometimes be found in the limestone of mountain summits, having traveled from the bottom of a warm sea to the top of a cold mountain over hundreds of millions of years. The world keeps rearranging itself very slowly into new forms. An ammonite is a spiral-shelled creature that lived in the seas for hundreds of millions of years before going extinct around the same time as the dinosaurs. Their coiled, mathematically precise forms have been preserved in rock all over the world. And when you hold a fossil ammonite, you're holding the carefully preserved home of a creature that navigated ancient seas long before there was anything like a human thought in the world. That's quite a thing to hold. The mathematics of spirals appears throughout nature, in ammonite shells, in the seeds of a sunflower, in the spiral of a galaxy, in the inner ear of a mammal. There seems to be a preference in nature for this particular shape, as if the universe came up with it once and found it so useful that it applied it everywhere. In this way, a colored mountainside carrying fossil spirals in its limestone connects the very small and the very large, the biological and the geological, the ancient sea and the present sky. If a small geological connection like that is making you feel quietly amazed in the dark, that's a good feeling to carry into sleep. A sense of the world's depth and quiet complexity. Not alarming, just vast and peaceful and full of spirals. A quick, gentle reminder. If you think a friend might enjoy falling asleep to the stories of rainbow mountains and ancient seas, sharing this video is a very kind thing to do. And leaving a comment, even if it's just a word that describes how you feel right now, makes a real difference to this quiet little channel. The mountains of Namibia in southern Africa carry extraordinary colors. The red dunes of the Namib Desert, which reach the very edge of the Atlantic Ocean in some places, are among the tallest dunes in the world. Their color, deep rust red, the result of iron oxide coating ancient sand grains, deepens toward the crests, and in the long shadowed mornings, when the light grazes across their surfaces at the softest angle. These are old dunes. Some of the sand in the Namib has been desert for over 55 million years. It is one of the oldest deserts on Earth. The sand grains have been tumbling and sorting and moving in the wind for so long that they are almost perfectly rounded, like tiny worn pearls, rounded by endless, patient motion. At Sossusvlei in Namibia, red dunes surround dry white clay pans where camel thorn trees stand in beautiful sculptural deadness, bleached white by decades of salt and dry air, their bare branches reaching in all directions, dark against the bright white clay. The contrast of the red dunes, the white pan, and the dark skeleton trees, one of the most striking visual compositions in the natural world, and one of the most still. When the light is very low and soft over Sossusvlei, the red of the dunes seems almost to glow from within, like something warm is held in the sand itself. Everything is reflected in absolute silence. The only movement is the occasional flight of a bird, crossing from one dune to another, and then gone. Rest now, if rest is near. The red dunes are glowing in the early light somewhere in Namibia. And here, wherever you are, it is exactly as calm and as quiet as you need it to be. Let the weight of your body be fully held by whatever is beneath you. You don't have to hold anything right now, not your thoughts, not the day, not even the colors of the mountains. They'll arrange themselves in whatever form is most comfortable as you drift. Perhaps rose and gold, perhaps pale turquoise and lavender, perhaps just the warmth of a sunset somewhere above high grass. We've been traveling a long way through mineral color, and there's something worth resting on for a while. The simple fact that all of these colors everywhere we visited exist whether or not anyone sees them. The painted hills of Oregon, the dunes of Namibia, the colored mountains of Peru. They were all happening in the dark, in the quiet, long before any human eye turned toward them. They weren't performing, they were just being. That's the particular restfulness of natural beauty. It doesn't need an audience. It makes no demands. It simply is, completely, in its own time and on its own terms. And when you encounter it, when a colored hillside catches your eye, or you hold a fossil in your hand, or you see turquoise water in the mountains, it offers itself to you without condition. In Morocco's Atlas Mountains, ochre and red peaks rise above valleys where almond trees bloom white in spring and villages built of the same earth-colored stone as the mountains around them sit in the afternoon heat. The high Atlas carries iron-stained limestone and sandstone in warm browns and reds, the valleys between them green with cultivated land and dotted with Berber villages whose flat-roofed houses seem to grow directly from the hillsides. The Atlas Mountains take their name from the Titan Atlas of Greek mythology, who was said to hold the sky on his shoulders. The name was given by ancient Greek sailors who saw the range from the sea, a line of mountains at the edge of the known world, rising from the African coast, and imagined that something must be holding the sky up at that horizon. The mountains didn't mind the name. In the valleys below the high Atlas, the Draa River runs southward through a landscape of palm oases and ancient kasbahs, fortified village complexes built from the local reddish clay. The clay is the same color as the mountains around it, as if everything in the landscape has agreed to a common palette. Red and ochre and dusty tan, with the dark green of palms and the silver of the river running through the middle. Clay has been a building material since before recorded history, because it is exactly what the earth provides, freely and abundantly. Adobe homes in the American Southwest, clay houses in Yemen, earthen buildings in sub-Saharan Africa, all of them take the color of the landscape into the architecture, and all of them have a warmth and belonging that more manufactured materials rarely match. The Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan has a geology that combines ancient metamorphic rock that has been transformed by heat and pressure deep in the earth, with mineral deposits that color the high valleys in pale ochres and dusty pinks and soft grays. The dzongs, large fortress monasteries, are built from local stone and whitewashed, their gleaming walls in constant contrast with the colored mountains behind them. Metamorphic rock is rock that has been changed. Limestone becomes marble, shale becomes slate, sandstone becomes quartzite. The transformation happens under great heat and pressure deep in the earth, and the result is often a rock more vivid, more crystalline, more beautiful than what it was before. There's a thought in that, if you want one. Marble is metamorphic limestone, and many of the world's most beautiful white and colored marbles come from mountain ranges where limestone was transformed by the heat of tectonic activity. Green serpentine marble, pink rose marble, the deep green of the marble used in Florence's Duomo. All of them are mountain rock transformed by deep, patient heat into something extraordinary. The quarries of Carrara in the Italian Apennines have provided white marble for over 2,000 years. The mountain of Monte Altissimo glows white in the afternoon sun, its quarried faces catching the light and sending it back across the valley. Michelangelo traveled there himself to select the stone for his sculptures, walking the white mountains looking for the particular character of each block. There is something quietly wonderful about the fact that Michelangelo's David, one of the most celebrated human figures ever carved, began as a mountain, as crystallized limestone pressure formed deep in the earth over millions of years. Art begins, in the deepest sense, in geology. The sounds of quarry work are largely absent at night and on weekends, and Carrara, in those quiet times, is a mountain landscape like any other, white against blue sky, cool in the shadow of its own mass, birds nesting in the scrub on the lower slopes. The marble is simply stone again, waiting, making no particular effort to be remarkable. The Dolomites of northern Italy are named for the mineral dolomite, calcium magnesium carbonate, which gives their rock a pale cream and pink color rather than the gray of typical limestone. At sunset, the Dolomites undergo what locals call enrosadira, a turning pink, then rose, then deep crimson, as the warm-toned rock catches the late light in full. The entire mountain range blushes. Enrosadira lasts only minutes, those last minutes when the direct sunlight is still catching the high peaks, while the valleys below have already gone into shadow. If you happen to be watching at the right moment, the mountains seem briefly lit from within, warm and vivid against a sky that is already deepened toward violet. Local legend says the Dolomites turn pink because of an enchantment, a spell cast on the mountains in an old story. Geologists have their own explanation, which is also, in its way, a form of enchantment, just one that uses the language of minerals and angles of light rather than magic. I hope you're feeling quite deeply relaxed now. If you have a moment before you drift off entirely, there's a playlist of similar nighttime journeys on this channel. Each one a different landscape, all of them moving at this same soft pace. They'll be there tomorrow night and the night after, whenever you need a quiet place to settle. The peak of the Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps turns a warm gold in the morning light before the sun is high enough to make it look gray. That early morning gold lasts perhaps half an hour, long enough to be astonishing, brief enough to feel like a gift. The mountain will do it again tomorrow without fail. Let your breathing slow a little more. Let the pink of the Dolomites at sunset be the color behind your eyes tonight, if it wants to be. Warm and unhurried and utterly, quietly beautiful. The night moves softly around you. Perhaps your thoughts are slowing now, becoming less distinct, like mountains seen through morning mist, present but not sharp, there but not demanding anything. That's a good place to be. Let's spend some time now with what creates color, not just in the rock, but in the landscape. The way light and moisture and season and elevation all work together to make a mountain into something that breathes with color through the year. The same mountain can look entirely different across the four seasons. In winter, it is white and silver and pale blue in the shadows. In spring, the snowmelt reveals the mineral colors beneath, and the first green of returning vegetation dots the lower slopes. Summer brings full color, blue sky, green forest, brown and ochre rock, wildflowers in the meadows. Autumn turns the forest gold and amber. A mountain is a color calendar, turning its pages slowly, each one different, each one complete. Alpine meadows, which bloom in brief, intense summers at high elevation, are among the most colorful places in the natural world. The flowers there have learned to bloom quickly and brightly. The season is short, the growing time is limited, and they invest everything in their short window. Gentians and edelweiss and alpine poppies and saxifrages in yellow and white and deep blue and pale pink, all together in the short grass. Edelweiss is one of the most well-known alpine flowers. Its felt white petals and star-shaped form, a symbol of the high mountains. It grows in rocky limestone areas above the tree line, where not many other plants can live, and its small size and muted color feel entirely right for the spare, clear air of its home. It doesn't shout. It simply persists quietly in exactly the conditions that suit it. Gentians, especially the spring gentian and the trumpet gentian, are among the most vivid blues in the natural world. A saturated, electric blue that seems almost too intense for the pale, rocky landscapes in which they appear. They look like pieces of the high-altitude sky that fell into the meadow and decided to stay. The meadows of the Carpathian Mountains in Romania and Ukraine bloom in May and June with an intensity of wildflower color that has largely disappeared from the rest of Europe. Traditional hay farming, unchanged for centuries in some of these valleys, has preserved the diversity of grasses and flowers that fertilizers and intensive agriculture have removed elsewhere. The old ways, in this case, kept the color. Hay, being cut in the traditional way, by hand, with a scythe early in the morning, is one of the gentlest sounds you can hear in the mountains. The swish and whisper of the blade, the soft fall of cut grass, the smell of it, warm and green and slightly sweet, settling into the cool morning air, the mountains watching unchanged above. The sweet smell of cut grass is caused partly by a compound called cis-3-hexanol, produced by plant cells when they're broken. The same compound is why the first rain, after a dry spell on a dusty path, smells the way it does. That green, alive smell, which has a name, petrichor. Both cut grass and rain on dry earth smell like something beginning again. Mountain streams carry color in their water, the mineral tints, the blue-gray of glacial silt, the amber of iron-rich spring water, the clear sparkle of a high limestone beck. The color of moving water over different types of stone is endlessly variable. Pale gray over granite, greenish over old seafloor limestone, the richest amber brown over peat. Each a different reading of the geology beneath. The sound of a mountain stream is one of the most naturally soporific sounds in the world. The continuous, varied, unhurried music of water over stone. It covers a wide range of frequencies in a random, irregular way that the brain finds soothing precisely because it carries information but demands no response. It's sound that says all is well and asks nothing in return. In autumn, mountain streams are often swollen with fallen leaves as well as cold rainwater. The leaves slow in pools and eddy in the current and catch in the rocks, adding their red and gold and brown to the water's own color. A mountain stream in October, seen from above, is a calligraphy of color, the stream's blue-gray and the leaves' warm palette, making slow curving patterns that change with every minute. The autumn color of deciduous forests is caused by the withdrawal of chlorophyll, the green pigment, as trees prepare for winter dormancy. Beneath the green chlorophyll, the leaves always contained yellow and orange pigments. They simply weren't visible through the dominant green. Autumn reveals what was always there. The yellow was never absent. It was only hidden. Red autumn leaves are a little different. The red pigments, anthocyanins, are actually produced fresh in autumn as a result of excess sugars in the leaf. The red is new. The yellow was always there. Both are beautiful, but in slightly different ways. A maple forest in October is one of the most deeply restful visual environments imaginable. The colors are warm without being alarming. Amber, gold, brick red, dusty orange. And they light the interior of the forest from above, turning it into something cathedral-like and softly illuminated. The light that falls through a canopy of red and gold leaves onto a forest floor is like no other light. If you're imagining that forest now, or any colored landscape from tonight's journey, and your eyes are growing heavy, that's exactly right. The colors will stay with you, warm and quiet as you drift. There's no need to hold on to them consciously. Just let them be there. And before you go fully, a gentle mention. There are many other stories like this one waiting in the playlist on this channel. Rainy forests, ocean nights, starlit deserts, each one made with the same care, the same quiet pace. They're there whenever you want them. The golden tamarack trees of the northern boreal forest turn a deep, warm amber in October and then lose their needles, one of the few conifers to do so. Whole hillsides of tamarack in the Canadian Shield and Siberian taiga go golden against the dark green of the surrounding spruce and the pale blue of the sky, creating a landscape of unexpected warmth in the deepening cold of autumn. Let the gold of autumn forests and the layered reds of mineral mountains be with you now. Let the warmth of iron and ancient stone and anthocyanins and maple leaves be a kind of companionship in the dark. You are, after all, made of minerals too. Iron in your blood, calcium in your bones, mineral elements from old stars and ancient seas. You belong to this colorful, quiet world, breathing slowly, deeply, the way the earth breathes, not urgently, not rapidly, but in long, slow rhythms that you feel as much as hear, the way the tide moves in and out, patient and inevitable, the way seasons change, each one giving way to the next without protest. Let's drift now through some of the quieter, lesser-known colored landscapes of the world, the places that don't appear on many postcards, but are, in their own way, just as richly beautiful. The chocolate hills of Bohol in the Philippines are not technically colored mountains. They are limestone hills covered in grass that turns brown and chocolate-colored in the dry season. Over 1,200 of these nearly perfectly conical hills rise from the flat landscape of the island, all roughly similar in size, all grass-covered, all brown in the dry months and green in the wet months. Their gentle regularity, their rounded perfection, creates a landscape of extraordinary calm. The hills were formed from marine limestone that was lifted over geological time from the sea floor. Rain and groundwater dissolved the limestone unevenly, leaving these resistant cone shapes where the rock was harder and more resilient. The result is something that looks almost designed, a landscape of comfortable, repeating forms, like a visual mantra. The sound of the chocolate hills in a dry season afternoon is the sound of dry grass in a warm wind, a soft, papery rustling that carries across the hills with every shift of the breeze. Butterflies move between the grass stems. Small lizards sun themselves on the few exposed rock surfaces. The hills simply stand, as they have for thousands of years, in their patient rows. In New Zealand's South Island, the mountains of the Southern Alps carry colors that shift with elevation and geology. Pale gray limestone in the foothills, dark schist in the mid-elevations, a silvery, flaky rock that catches the light in a particular shimmery way, and bare white rock and glacier above. The schist of central Otago gives the tors, strange, stacked rock formations on the hilltops, a texture that catches low light beautifully. Central Otago schist is a distinctive dark gold and gray, and the old stone buildings of the region, wine cellars, farmhouses, Old Chinese miners' huts from the gold rush era are built from it, giving everything a connected, continuous tone. The landscape and the architecture are the same material. The houses grew from the hills. Gold was found in the rivers and schist hills of central Otago in the 1860s, drawing thousands of prospectors from around the world. The rivers were diverted, the hillsides were dug, and then the gold was gone, and the people left, and the landscape recovered slowly in its own time. The schist tors still stand on the hilltops, watching in no particular hurry. The snowy mountains of New South Wales in Australia carry a high, spare beauty quite different from the colored sedimentary landscapes of other continents. The rock there is largely granite, pale, speckled, cold in winter and warm in summer, covered in the brief warm season by alpine meadows with a particular palette, cream and yellow and purple and the pale blue of snow daisies. Snow daisies, Kelmisia species, cover the Australian high country in summer in carpets of white with yellow centers, their petals sometimes flushed with pale lavender at the tips. They are among the first flowers to appear after the winter snow retreats, pushing up through the last of the cold into the thin, clear air of the high plateau. The Australian Alps are, by world standards, modest in height. Mount Kosciuszko, the highest peak on the Australian mainland, is just over 2,200 meters. But height is not the only measure of a mountain's character. The high country of New South Wales and Victoria has a particular, quiet, wide-open beauty. The pale granite summits, the meadows full of daisies and sedges, the cold blue sky, the occasional cry of a currawong echoing across the valley, that gets deep into the memory of everyone who visits. The currawong's call in the Australian mountains is one of the most evocative sounds in the natural world, liquid and clear, and carrying effortlessly across long distances. It's the sound of that particular kind of emptiness that is actually fullness, a landscape fully itself, needing nothing added. In the mountains of Kyushu, Japan, volcanic activity has created the vivid turquoise crater lake of Mount Aso, a deep, milky turquoise that comes from volcanic minerals, particularly sulfur, in the water. The lake sits in the caldera of one of the world's largest volcanic craters, surrounded by mountain walls, completely self-contained and still. Crater lakes appear in other places too, in New Zealand, in Ecuador, in Iceland, in Cameroon, each one a different color depending on the minerals and gases from the volcano below. Some are bright turquoise, some deep green, some milky white, some an extraordinary pale blue. All of them carry that quality of interior stillness, a lake inside a mountain, quiet at the center of something large. The Japanese concept of ma, negative space, the pause between things, applies beautifully to a crater lake. The lake is the pause at the center of the volcano, the quiet in the middle of the geological activity, the stillness inside the mountain. It holds its color and its stillness while everything geological continues to work very slowly around it. If the word ma, that feeling of the pause, the quiet space between things, is settling into you right now, then this is a good moment to appreciate it. You're in your own ma right now. A pause in the day. A stillness between the active parts of your life. Rest here in it. If this kind of quiet story is something you'd recommend to a friend, please do share it. And if you'd like to leave a comment with any color you're imagining right now from any of the landscapes we visited, I'd be genuinely delighted to read it. The comments on this channel are some of the gentlest and most thoughtful I've come across anywhere. The mountains of Ethiopia's Simien Range carry dramatic geology, but rest in a color palette of warm browns, deep greens, and pale golds. The eroded basalt pinnacles and escarpments in dark rust and ochre, the highland plateau covered in golden Abyssinian grass and dotted with giant lobelia plants that grow only at altitude, nowhere else in the world. The giant lobelia of Ethiopia and East Africa's mountains grows in rosettes of broad leaves at the base, and then, when it's ready, after several years of quiet growth, sends up a tall central spike covered in small flowers. The spike can reach several meters, then having flowered and set seed, the plant dies. It spent its whole existence preparing for one tall, colorful moment. Let that image rest with you. The tall spike of the giant lobelia rising slowly above the golden grass, carrying its flowers into the thin mountain air in its one patient bloom. There is no urgency in it. It simply rises and flowers and is done and goes back to the mountain. A very peaceful way to be. You've come a long way through colors and stones and mountains tonight. Perhaps you're half dreaming already, and the landscapes are becoming something softer and more personal, less geography and more just color and warmth and the feeling of wide, quiet spaces. That's exactly where these stories are meant to take you. Let's spend some time now with water and light in mountain landscapes. The way these two elements together create color effects that no mineral alone could match. The phenomenon of iridescence appears in mountain streams and lakes when thin films of oil from decaying organic matter from certain algae form on the water's surface and create rainbow patterns in scattered light. These small floating rainbows are not the vivid arcs of a full rainbow, but softer, more diffuse, circles and curves of pale color drifting on the still water near the bank of a mountain stream, there for a moment, then gone as the water moves. A full rainbow over a mountain landscape is one of the great visual gifts of rainy weather. The arc appears when sunlight enters a raindrop and reflects from the inside surface, emerging at an angle that separates the colors: red on the outside, violet on the inside, orange and yellow and green and blue between. Every rainbow you've ever seen was the same width of arc, the same sequence of colors, the same physics made visible in water droplets. But each one is seen from a unique position, unique weather, a unique moment. No two people see the same rainbow, even standing side by side, because the geometry is personal. Your rainbow belongs to you. Double rainbows, a fainter, larger arc appearing above the primary one with colors reversed, form when light reflects twice inside the raindrops before emerging. The second arc is quieter, its colors reversed, violet on the outside, red on the inside, its brightness lower. It's as if the rainbow said its piece and then, gently, offered to say it again more softly. In mountain regions, rainbows are especially dramatic because the combination of high terrain, rapidly changing weather, and open sky creates the conditions for them frequently and in dramatic settings. A rainbow arching from one peak to another across a rain-dark valley is a sight that stops everything. The rainbow over colored mountains, say, a rainbow appearing above the red and ochre hills of the American Southwest after a desert thunderstorm, doubles the color, layers mineral color beneath water refracted color, and creates something extraordinary. The sky and the stone and dialogue both reaching into the same palette. Moonbows, rainbows created by moonlight rather than sunlight, are rare and very soft. Because moonlight is so much less bright than sunlight, the colors of a moonbow are usually too faint for the color-detecting cells in the eye to register well. They appear white or very pale. But photographed with a long exposure, they reveal soft, full color. They exist as color, whether or not our eyes can see it. The color is there. The aurora borealis, the northern lights, is the most dramatic natural light show that mountain regions at high latitudes can experience. In Norway, Iceland, Alaska, and northern Canada, the mountains at night are sometimes lit from above by curtains of green and sometimes pink and occasionally red light that move slowly across the sky in silent waves. The aurora is created by charged particles from the sun entering the Earth's atmosphere at the poles and colliding with atmospheric gases. Oxygen produces green and sometimes red light. Nitrogen produces blue and purple. The colors are, in the most direct sense, the colors of the atmosphere itself, made visible by solar energy, the sky lighting up with its own colors. From the top of a snowy mountain in Norway, the aurora above, and the dark fjord and snow fields below, the silence is so complete that you become aware of the lights as something you experience with your whole body rather than just your eyes. A slow, vast, color-breathing thing overhead. Nothing to do but be present to it. The green of the aurora, that particular soft, cold green, is unlike any other green in the world. It is not the green of plants or copper or glass. It is the green of excited oxygen atoms at an altitude of around 100 kilometers, seen through a cold, dark Arctic sky. It is the color of a specific altitude, a specific element, a specific moment in the sun's activity. It is the most genuinely singular color I can think of. People have been watching the northern lights from mountain peaks and shorelines for thousands of years, and they have always invented stories for them. Torches of the dead, the dance of spirits, the fire of the gods. Every culture that has seen them has needed to give them a name that matches their strangeness and their beauty. The science doesn't reduce the strangeness. If anything, knowing that the sky is lighting up with the colors of individual atoms makes it stranger and more wonderful. Before you drift all the way into sleep, a small, quiet reminder. If you've found this channel and this story and it has helped you relax, perhaps there's a playlist to explore, full of other nights in gentle places. It's all there, waiting for whenever you need it. There's no rush. The phenomenon of alpenglow, the pink or orange glow that appears on mountain peaks after sunset when they're lit by indirect reddened light from the eastern horizon, is one of the quietest, beautiful things that happens daily and is usually missed. It lasts only minutes, appearing on the peaks while the valleys are already in full shadow. The mountains receive the last light long after the rest of the landscape has let it go. Alpenglow has a cool, rosy tone quite different from the warm gold of sunset. It's as if the mountains are being lit from a different source, something soft and indirect and cool from the east, rather than the warm directness of the western sun. In the Alps and Dolomites and Himalayas, alpenglow is watched by hikers and climbers who have learned to look east as the sun sets in the west. Snow lit by alpenglow turns the palest rose, a color so soft and so fleeting that it almost feels like imagination. The white snow holds the pink for a few minutes, then lets it go. The peaks return to gray, then disappear into the dark. Until tomorrow. Somewhere between awareness and sleep, there is a landscape that belongs only to you, made of colors you've seen and colors you've never seen, mountains from this story perhaps, or mountains from your own memory, or mountains you've only imagined. That landscape is yours. It's as real as anything. Let's continue now through some of the geological stories that paint these mountains, their extraordinary colors, moving slowly with no particular destination. The age of a rock can sometimes be read in its color. The oldest rocks on Earth are often dark gray or black. Ancient igneous rocks formed from the deep heat of an early, more active planet. The Jack Hills zircons of Western Australia, some of the oldest minerals on Earth at over 4 billion years old, are tiny, just grains within a larger rock, but they carry in their chemistry a record of conditions that no other material holds. They are, in a sense, the oldest colored things on Earth. The Pilbara region of Western Australia, where some of the oldest exposed rock surfaces on Earth can be found, has a particular color, deep, oxidized red, banded with ancient gray and black, that reflects its enormous age. These are some of the first places where life appeared, in ancient seas that once covered what is now desert, and the red of the Pilbara iron formations is one of the signatures of that early, oxygen-rich moment in Earth's history. The banded iron formations of the Pilbara and similar ancient terrains around the world were formed when early photosynthetic life, blue-green algae, or cyanobacteria, began producing oxygen for the first time. That oxygen reacted with dissolved iron in the seawater, causing it to precipitate out and fall to the sea floor in layers, building up the banded formations that now make those landscapes such a vivid, deep red. The colors of those mountains are, in the most literal sense, the colors of life's beginning. This thought that the red of a mountain hillside might be there because life first learned to photosynthesize billions of years ago in an ancient sea is one of the quieter, profound thoughts that geology offers. Everything connected, everything leaving a trace, everything part of the same very long, very patient story. The Bungle Bungle Range in Western Australia, in Purnululu National Park, has beehive-shaped domes of sandstone striped in alternating bands of orange, iron-rich, and black or gray, algae and cyanobacteria living in the rock's pores. The shapes are gentle and bulbous, rounded over millions of years by rain and wind, and their scale is intimate rather than vast. You move through them rather than looking up at them. The sound inside the gorges of the Bungle Bungles is very quiet. The sandstone absorbs some sound, and the narrow, twisting passages channel what little wind there is into soft sighs. Birds call in the gorges, their voices bouncing softly off the striped walls. Water seeps in thin sheets over certain rock faces after rain, carrying the colors together briefly before evaporating in the dry heat. Aboriginal Australians have known the Bungle Bungle Range for thousands of years. For the Gija people, the landscape has cultural and spiritual significance that goes far beyond its visual beauty. It is a place with meaning layered into it by generations of relationship and story. The colors are not just geological events. They are part of a living culture's relationship with its country. The Flinders Ranges of South Australia carry their own color story. Pale purples and oranges and dusty reds of ancient quartzite, folded into arching ridges by tectonic forces so old that the mountains have since been worn down and then worn down again. What remains are the ghost outlines of much larger ancient ranges, their roots exposed, their colors muted by time into something soft and warm. Wilpena Pound in the Flinders Ranges is a natural amphitheater, a roughly circular depression about 80 kilometers around, surrounded by ridge walls of pink and purple quartzite. From inside, it is a wide, flat-floored world, enclosed by softly colored walls. From above, as it can be seen from small aircraft, it looks like a great natural bowl left in the landscape by something very large and very gentle. Eagles circle above Wilpena Pound on the thermals that rise from the warmed quartzite ridges. They circle slowly without urgency, scanning the floor of the amphitheater with eyes that see detail from extraordinary heights. To an eagle, the color and form of the pound is simply home, a familiar thermal, a familiar horizon, a familiar place of warm, rising air and wide sight. The mountain ranges of the eastern Sahara, the Hoggar and Tassili N'Ajjer plateaus of Algeria, rise from the flat desert in dark, eroded volcanic forms. The rock is old and varied, basalt, syenite, sandstone, and ochres and reds. And the erosion has created forms that look architectural, towers and arches and standing walls of stone, some of them hundreds of meters tall, all of them worn smooth by millennia of wind-blown sand. The Tassili N'Ajjer Plateau contains one of the world's most significant collections of prehistoric rock art. tens of thousands of paintings and engravings made by people who lived in the Sahara when it was not desert but a well-watered landscape of lakes and rivers and forests. The paintings show elephants and hippos and cattle and humans dancing, all in a landscape that is now deep desert. The colors used, ochre, white, red, black, were mineral pigments from the same mountains. The artists used the mountain to describe the world. Those ancient rock paintings have lasted because they were sheltered in caves and overhangs, protected from direct rain and sun. The colors have faded, but are still visible. 10,000 years of a life lived in a world that no longer exists, preserved in mineral pigment on stone. History written in the colors of the mountain. Ochre, one of the oldest pigments used by humans, comes from iron-rich clay, the same mineral that colors so many of the mountains we visited tonight. Humans have been using ochre for at least 100,000 years, for body decoration, for painting, for ceremony. The color that marks the walls of Tassili N'Ajjer, the same color as the painted hills of Oregon, the same color as the sands of Namibia, has been meaningful to human beings for as long as we have made anything meaningful at all. The color is one of the oldest human languages. A warm, quiet reminder before we move on. If you're finding this a peaceful way to spend the night, I'd be so glad to hear from you in the comments. Even a brief good night carries a lovely warmth to it. And there's a playlist, as always, for other gentle evenings. Let the ochre be with you, that warm, familiar, ancient color, as you rest. It has been meaningful for 100,000 years. Tonight it is simply warm. The night is fully yours now. Whatever restlessness existed earlier has been left behind, somewhere along the trails and ridgelines and mineral shorelines of this long, quiet journey. Here, at this depth of the night, only the softest things remain. Let's visit some mountain landscapes that carry their color not in rock, but in the living things that grow on them. The forests and flowers and mosses that add biological color to geological form. The cloud forests of the Andes, found at middle elevations where mist and cloud are almost constant, carry a color that is unlike any other forest. The trees are draped in mosses and bromeliads and orchids and ferns, every surface covered in soft greens of a dozen different shades. The whole forest dripping with moisture, the air cool and still. Walking through a cloud forest is walking through a living green room with soft walls. Mosses in cloud forests absorb remarkable quantities of water. A cubic meter of moss can hold more than its own weight in water. The mosses act as a kind of sponge for the whole mountain, releasing water slowly into the streams that run down the slopes. The green of the moss is therefore not just visual beauty. It is a water storage system, a hydrological service, a gift that the mountain gives slowly and steadily to the valleys below. Bromeliads, the family of plants that includes pineapples, grow epiphytically in cloud forests, which means they grow on the surfaces of other plants, particularly on tree branches and trunks, without harming them. they collect water in their central reservoirs, cups formed by tightly overlapping leaves, and these cups become small ecosystems of their own, home to specialized frogs, insects, and microorganisms. A single bromeliad cup can contain an entire living community. The colors of cloud forest bromeliads range from pale green to deep burgundy to silver gray, depending on the species. Some have leaves tipped with bright red or orange, particularly where the flower will emerge. In the diffuse light of the cloud forest, these warm colors glow quietly from the otherwise cool green world around them. Orchids of the cloud forest are extraordinarily diverse. In the Ecuadorian and Peruvian Andes, thousands of orchid species have been identified, many of them occurring in very small areas of a single hillside, each one adapted to a specific elevation, a specific moisture level, a specific light condition. They are, in a sense, specialists of the vertical, each occupying its own narrow altitude band, each with its own color and form. The smallest orchid flowers in the world are no larger than a pinhead. They exist in the cloud forests of Ecuador, their tiny blooms visible only with a lens, their petals white and delicate and perfectly formed. They receive their pollinators, tiny insects, and they set their seeds, and they continue wholly and completely doing what orchids do at a scale where you would need to look very carefully to see them at all. The Neblina tree in the cloud forests of the Tepuis, those extraordinary flat-top table mountains of Venezuela and Brazil, has bark that peels in thin sheets, each layer a slightly different russet and cream color. The tree always in the process of revealing itself. The Tepuis themselves are islands of stone rising from the forest, their flat summits hosting entirely unique ecosystems found nowhere else on Earth. Angel Falls, the world's highest waterfall, drops from the edge of Ollantaytambo, one of these table mountains, in a single free fall of nearly a kilometer. Before it reaches the base, much of the water disperses into mist. The falling water catches the light and creates, in the right conditions, a continuous rainbow in the mist below the falls. A waterfall with its own permanent rainbow at its foot. The Tepuis were the inspiration for Arthur Conan Doyle's novel, The Lost World, in which explorers find dinosaurs surviving on an inaccessible plateau. The reality is almost as extraordinary. Tepui summits host carnivorous plants, endemic insects, rare frogs, and plant species found nowhere else in the universe, living high above the forest floor in an environment so isolated that evolution has taken its own unique course for millions of years. The summit of a tepui, covered in sparse carnivorous plants and ancient crystal quartzite, under a sky that moves between brilliant sun and sweeping cloud, is one of the most otherworldly places on Earth, and one of the quietest. The only sounds are wind and sometimes the distant roar of water. Carnivorous plants, sundews, pitcher plants, bladderworts evolve their insect-catching strategies in nutrient-poor environments where the soil offers too little nitrogen for ordinary plant growth. By digesting insects, they supplement what the soil cannot provide. Their colors are often beautiful, the deep red of a sundew in full sun, the pale green and red of a pitcher plant, the yellow of a bladderwort flower reflected in a dark peat pool. Beauty arrived at by necessity, as it often does. The peat bogs of high mountain moorlands in Scotland, in Scandinavia, in the Falkland Islands, in Patagonia, carry a color palette that is subtle but deeply satisfying. The rust red and gold of sphagnum mosses, the dark peaty black of wet ground, the pale green of cotton grass, the occasional vivid purple of heather in bloom. These are colors that ask to be seen at close range, on your hands and knees rather than from a distance. Heather in full bloom in August on a Scottish or Norwegian hillside turns whole mountain slopes a soft, dusty purple that is visible from miles away. The color is warmer than lavender, more muted than violet, completely its own thing. Bees move through it in their purposeful, unhurried way, and the whole hillside makes a low, continuous hum when they are working. The smell of heather is slight and dry and slightly sweet, a good smell to remember on a night when you need something simple and pleasant to rest your mind on. Heather and peat and cold highland air. I'm so glad you're still here with me tonight. If you'd like to see more of what this channel offers, the playlist is waiting. Forests, oceans, mountains, rain, all of it moving at this same easy pace. And if you have a moment, a like on this video helps so much. It sends this quiet little corner of the internet to people who might need it. Thank you for being here. The last meadows below the snow line in the Himalayas bloom with primulas in spring, low rosettes of leaves sending up stems bearing clustered flowers in pale yellow or deep purple or bright pink, depending on the species. In the thin soil between rocks at high elevation, where the growing season lasts only a few months, these small, vivid flowers are the mountain's spring statement, small and definite and perfectly timed. Sleep, if it's fully here for you, is a good place to go. The mountains will be vivid tomorrow in exactly the same ways. The iron will still be red in the Zhangye cliffs. The alpacas will still be grazing near Vinicunca. The heather will still be purple on the Scottish hillside. They rest too in the dark, and so can you. The breathing has slowed. The thoughts are coming less frequently now, or perhaps they are less sharp, softer at the edges, more like shapes than sentences. This is the right direction. Let it continue. Close your eyes if they aren't already closed. Let the colored mountains exist somewhere at the edge of your awareness, not demanding anything, not asking to be seen, simply there the way they always are, in their mineral patience, their iron reds and limestone whites and copper blues, their bands of ancient time laid down in quiet and waiting to be dissolved back into quiet when the time comes, which is not now, which is not for millions of years more. The world is old and colored and very, very patient. You are held. Rest now. Good night.